I am Judy Dines. I play flute in the Houston Symphony. I've been in a symphony nearly 30 years, so really quite a long time.
Well, I picked up an interest because my father was a Methodist minister and he had a church that didn't have a pianist. They had a piano, but no pianist. And I said, well, I'll play. And he said, you don't know how to play. And I said, so get me lessons. And I did. And 6 months later, I was playing.
Like I said, I've been in orchestra for nearly 30 years. And for most of that time, I've been the only person of color in the orchestra. I grew up in Washington, D.C., which at the time was a majority Black city. And only recently, I think that's been changing. But I had a youth orchestra. Most of us in the youth orchestra were Black. So, I had sort of that sort of experience. But, the further I went, the less that became the case. And so it was just more of a kind of getting used to when I got to the Houston Symphony about being the only person there.
In fact, use that to propel you because I think the more information you have, the better off you're going to be.
And so as I kind of moved on to other groups or other orchestras, it just kind of, it's not so much that it bothered me, but I did notice that I wasn't part of the larger group in that way. I saw that I was the only Black person there, like that now, or just less Black people like I said, when I was in college. There were a few Black people in the college orchestra, and same as grad school, just a few people. I do know that there are other people that have had issues, but I'm not one of those people.
Learn how the organization works. Get in, especially if you're interested in what that organization is doing. You can't have your voice heard if you're not in the room. So those are the kind of things that help. And also one of the things that I think you guys can do is, as students, get to know your fellow composers and ask them to write pieces for you. Not just now, but when you're in college, when you're in grad school, past your degree work, because that also helps get the word out. And so when we got to class, everybody paired off into study groups, except me. But what they didn't know was that I had been doing set theory since I was 17. So when we got our first test back, I made the only A in the group, in the class. And suddenly I was getting all these invitations for study groups. And I just said, no, I don't do study groups. Thanks, though. Maybe next class. Yes, different languages have a different flow. Different languages also have different emphasis. Therefore, the way they use rhythm is going to be slightly different. Doesn't mean it's going to be negative, it just means it's different. Open your ears to that kind of thing.
I mean, it makes me think of this time. I went to a class to talk to some high school seniors. I think the entire class was really people of color, the entire class. And they were all flute players. And they all had they had a range of talent, but there were some very good flute players in that class. And I was asking if anybody was going to go on to college, and none of them were, because they just were like, well, what am I going to do with that? I can't do anything with this. It's like they didn't even think that they could do anything with that. So I want the word to be out that things can happen. And it doesn't even just have to be orchestra. There's lots of things, lots of different aspects to music, and that everybody can be a part of that. So I like this idea of just like at every point in time, in someone's time, either the timeline, to kind of have a touch on them so they know, yes, this can happen. This is something that is possible.
Also, because of all the things that have happened with Black Lives Matter this summer, they've suddenly discovered, oh my goodness, there are Black composers in America. We should see if they have music. And so the real question is, okay, this is happening at this moment, but what happens next? Write to your organizations that are in your area, in your neighborhood, in your community, in your city, and say, when are you guys going to program this composer's work? It's really important that you just dig in and don't allow yourself to get discouraged because it's not going well that day or that week. or that month. Sometimes we have downturns and we just have to kind of regroup and rethink and reprocess and, okay, this didn't go well. But as I tell my students, one of the best things you can do is do what I call mindful practicing, so that as you're working with goals in mind.
Those things, those are your tools. That's not the end goal, you know, of being a musician. Those are your tools to bring out the musicianship in you. So this is kind of my advice for really knowing how to put your own voice out there.
Ah,
Um,
and
so
speaking of voice, there's another piece of it, which is, and this is something I learned from Sam Jones, who was my first teacher at Rice. He said, don't forget your background. Bring it with you. What drew you to music in the first place? Um, if there are people that are writing and performing in the tradition of your background, absorb it. Don't run from it. It's part of what makes you a full human, because we're not machines. We're human beings who make music and we create art. And this has been fun.
thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming.